I'm Edward Warfield, and I'm honored today to interview Russell Glass, the CEO of Ginger. Welcome, Russell.
Thanks for having me.
Can you provide an overview of your entrepreneurial career, starting from Agia to Bizzo, and then the decision to join Ginger? And were you looking for a social media company when you decided to join Ginger?
So, if you go way back, even pre-Aegea days into high school, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So this was something that was in my brain, maybe because my dad was an entrepreneur and it guided me in this direction. But I started a tennis racket stringing business in high school. I ran a bar and a off-campus delivery business in college. And when I left college, I joined a very entrepreneurial software company called Trilogy Software. And it was in the middle of the original 1.0 dot-com boom. And I just fell in love with innovation, technology, the ability to fundamentally change how industries operate, solve large-scale problems using innovation and technology. And so I founded Aegea, and in almost every way, that was an abject disaster. We didn't know what we didn't know. I didn't know the difference between a good culture and a bad one, a great hire and a terrible one. I mean, and I was 23, so there's some reason for that. But I think the lessons from that failure really led to the tenets of why I built Bizzo, how I built Bizzo. So, to me, one of the greatest lessons I learned was failure actually is the best way to learn lessons. It's better than any book you can read. It's better than any video you can watch. Actually going through, making mistakes, and then doing a retrospective on why did this go sideways. I realized that people, culture, environment, focus is what I thought was missing in the first one. And so when I founded Bizzo, the first thing I wrote down was, what are our core values? Like, what do we want to build a company around? How do we want to think about the kinds of people we hire? What kind of culture do we want to build? Even before I knew completely what the business model was going to look like. And Bizzo turned out to be a wild success. We grew very quickly. I think you were one of our partners in the early days, and ultimately sold to LinkedIn. I ran the marketing solutions business at LinkedIn for 3 years. Also a wonderful experience, great culture fit with what we had built at Bizzo. And then I took some time off to be dad and realized that what I wanted to do next was be an entrepreneur again. It's what I love. It's what I've always loved. But I wanted to do it at a company that needed to exist in the world. And as great as Bizzo was, we were making marketers slightly more successful. Came across Ginger and realized I could spend the next decade on this problem. This is the mental health supply-demand imbalance is massive, and there are so many people that need help. And so here I am.
And so, before we jump into what Bizzo is today, what is the symbolism for Ginger's name?
Ginger is a preventative medicine root in Eastern cultures. And our founder, Karan Singh, his mom used to give it to him when he was growing up. Even at the hint of a cold, she'd give him ginger. And we think one of the key areas of need in mental health is preventative care. How do you support people earlier in their mental health journey so that they have the self-care capabilities, they have the ability to manage some of the hard times. And Ginger was a great metaphor for that.
And so let's talk about where Ginger is today in terms of your footprint, your care providers, the engagement, the utilization numbers, clients, employees. Give us an idea of where Ginger is today.
The whole download. You're looking for everything. Ginger is what I would call a hyper growth company today. We've grown our business in the order of 800% over the last 2 years. So massive growth. Today we're supporting over 150 enterprise clients. We have over 750,000 covered lives in that bolus of client base. And primarily today, we're supporting employees of large companies. So, companies that are kind of 500 employees and up. We are supporting their staff. We're helping them. We're helping them make sure that their employees always have great access to mental health care. Increasingly, we're growing that footprint from just employers into the health plan world as well now. So Kaiser Permanente is a large partner of ours. Cigna just invested in us, and we'll be working with them in the coming year. And so we're expanding access beyond this first group of employed into a group of covered lives at health plans. And we intend to continue to expand outward until, our vision is a world where mental health is never an obstacle. And we want anybody, anywhere to be able to access this kind of world-class mental health care. If they even, all they need is internet access, and we want them to be able to access this.
So tell us a little bit about the business model. Is it a SaaS model, and what is the mix between clients and health plans?
I'll start with the last question. Today, 90% of our business is enterprise clients, and like I mentioned, it ranges probably a little lower than the core range. It ranges down to about 200 employees on up to the largest employers in the world, the Delta Airlines of the world, and the PricewaterhouseCoopers of the world. We are bought on a PEPM, or per employee per month basis, in a subscription model. So an employer like, let's say a Robinhood, one of our great customers. A Robinhood will buy us based on the number of employees they have. So let's say if Robinhood has 1,000 employees, it's probably about right. They will pay for us on a per employee per month basis for unlimited access to Ginger's content, to our coaching, which is a chat-based real-time coaching capability, and to our platform, which includes lifecycle marketing and reporting that shows an employer at an aggregate level, anonymously, how is their workforce doing? What are the trends over time? What are the things we're seeing that are really causing their employees issues, so that they can make other changes at an enterprise-wide level? We then have two different flavors of that model, where it's a fee-for-service model for clinical services. So when people need therapy or psychiatry, we are a 50-state medical provider. We bring those resources into the care team. So now a person might have a coach and a therapist, or a coach and a therapist and a psychiatrist if medication management is needed. Those resources in the fee-for-service model will be billed back through the health plan. In the single fee model, we will bundle a certain amount of those clinical sessions into the rate that we're charging the employer. So those are the kind of the key models that we deploy today. In the health plan world, it's more of a utilization-based model. So we'll charge a subscription based on their active members using the Ginger platform.
So mental health has a whole slew of issues: access, clinician shortages, reimbursement issues, disparity problems. How is Ginger addressing these issues?
Stigma issues, friction issues, go on and on, right? Yeah, it's a very complex set of problems that exist in the mental health world. The core one, though, the biggest issue that we see in mental health today is that there are just not enough providers to deliver the care that people need. And those curves are actually diverging. And what I mean by that is anxiety rates are going up, suicide rates are going up, depression rates are going up, and the number of providers going into the space is going down relative to those that are retiring from the space, leaving the space. So you've got these curves that are divergent. And Ginger looked at that and said, this network-based model, in other words, the health plan having a network of providers that they're going to allow you to get access to is broken and will never be fixed. It's not, it can't work. The math isn't there, right? The laws of physics still apply. And what you see is Ginger taking the best of evidence-based care. So what do we know works about care? And applying technology, automation, different modalities to scale that work. And it starts with our behavioral health coaching model. So these behavioral health coaches are superstars. They often have certificates in behavioral health coaching, but it's a sub-license level of care. They're not doing the things that a therapist is doing. Like they won't do dialectic behavioral therapy, or they won't do cognitive behavioral therapy. You can almost think of them like a gym coach for the mind. So when you go into a gym and you have all of this equipment you could use, often the question is, well, what should I use? And what is the right way to use it? And how do I motivate myself to show up at the gym every morning, right? Or every other morning? And how do I motivate myself to do that last, lift when I'm exhausted? A gym coach helps you through all of that. Well, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Here are the exercises and how to do them right. And, here's accountability. I'm going to show up at the gym with you. So if you don't show up, you're going to feel bad. So that's what our coaches do for people's mental health. They're teaching them what exercises will help based on the goals that they need to accomplish in the mental health realm, whether it's minor anxiety, minor depression, subclinical levels of need. Again, back to the name, back to Ginger, right?
And how is AI and machine learning integrated into that?
Great question. So those coaches are still one-to-one unless we superpower them. And that's where our AI comes in. Our AI is monitoring the chats that those coaches are having. It's making recommendations on the care pathway based on the millions of conversations we've had in the past. It's making recommendations on escalation. So this person, let's say we're seeing a medium level of suicide risk, we're going to escalate this person, or we're seeing that this need might require a therapist for cognitive behavioral therapy or some other evidence-based intervention. It is also helping the coaches by making recommendations on what they should say back to the members. So what we call smart replies. It's auto-summarizing coach notes so that the coach doesn't have to spend time typing up notes about the session. It'll summarize it for them. So all of these things we're doing and continue to innovate on allow us to provide far more care than we could provide otherwise. And today, our estimate is that we are at about 4 to 5x the amount of care that you can provide in the standard system we're providing in the Ginger system, while being 2 to 3 times more effective than the standard of care. I mean, unbelievable already, and yet still scratching the surface, we think of where we could go.
And everyone's been writing about the tsunami in mental health related to COVID. One in 5 COVID-19 patients are diagnosed with a mental illness within 3 months. How has Ginger responded to this dramatic increase?
It's interesting. Ginger has been thinking supply-demand imbalance forever, right? For the last 5 years, we've been focused on building a platform to solve supply-demand imbalance. So while COVID accelerated adoption and need, it really hasn't changed our fundamental approach to mental health, right? It's quite a test of our system, but the fact that we're already at 4 times the rate of care, the ability to deliver care, means that we're far more effective, and right now is a time when it's proving to be needed. It's proving to be important. In the last few months, I would say if anything has changed for us, the acuity levels have gone up. So there's more need for therapy and psychiatry than there was before. On average, we've probably gone from about 10% of our population needing that higher level of care to maybe 16, 17% of the population. So we are seeing more acute, more intense levels of need. That's caused pressure on our system. So it's required us to bring more providers in. It's required us to hire more coaches. So we have seen an increase in hiring of late, but for the most part, we feel lucky that we have a system that is designed to manage real scale.
And how are you addressing the marginalized and underserved group? I mean, how do you get access to them, and how are you dealing with them?
Well, I'll start by saying we want to do more. Right now, given we've been focused on the enterprise, we're still very much focused on a group that fortunately has access to resources. A few things that we've done. One is we acquired a company about a year ago called Live Better. And they are a conversational AI company that was providing care to underserved populations. As part of the acquisition, we allowed that company to continue on as a nonprofit. So they're continuing on doing the nonprofit work for underserved populations while we're taking their technology and building it into our core systems. And so that was one thing that we did because we felt like we didn't want them to just leave that market. We wanted them to be able to continue on and innovate at that end of the market. Two is we are starting to work with Medicaid health plans. And that'll be the first big step into these types of populations that are underserved and underprivileged. And we're going to learn from it. And, based on what we learned from that population, we want to continue to expand out from there. But we have a few health plans that we're looking to launch in the next 12 months in Medicaid that I think will be a great learning for us there. And our vision is everybody. So it's an important part of what we're doing, and we're going to continue to innovate till we get to the point where even if you can't afford a cup of coffee every day, we want you to be able to afford our system.
Well, you've been on a capital tear. In August, you closed on a $50 million Series D. I think it was just after you closed your previous funding. So, walk us through your funding, and the timing of it just seems so quick between your recent funding and this funding. So, walk us through your funding.
It was a surprise to us as well. We didn't expect to be raising capital this year, but in times like global pandemics, plans change. And, when the assumptions that you use for planning change wildly, it's folly not to change the plans themselves. And we looked at what the pandemic was doing, and we saw an increased need, increased demand coming, and we saw uncertainty. So we saw that we weren't sure exactly how predictable our sales pipelines were going to be. Some enterprises are really struggling because their industries have been ravaged by the pandemic. Some are doing really well, but it created enough uncertainty that we said, okay, the combination of increased demand and increased uncertainty, we didn't feel great about our balance sheet. Even though we had cash in the bank, we felt like we would have to make very conservative decisions instead of investing into this period when we think there's opportunity for rapid growth and helping a lot of people. So that's why we decided to raise a round. Fortunately, it came together very quickly, and that's due to all the incredible work everybody at Ginger has been doing to really grow the business and build a model that we think is scalable and differentiated. And now we have a balance sheet that allows us to make long-term decisions versus worrying about the ins and outs of what's going to happen with the pandemic.
And part of that funding is going into R&D. So, what is the R&D that you're working on?
If you fundamentally look at Ginger, we are a supply-demand imbalance company, right? So what we're trying to solve for is a world where there's far more demand than there is supply. Supply side innovation, because we don't have to worry about demand, supply side innovation requires a lot of R&D. How do we automate different parts of the process? How do we test and iterate on things that work and things that don't? How do we use all of this data we've accumulated, probably the world's largest mental health data set, and use that to understand personalization of care pathways and get people healthy faster so that our resources can go to the next person that need them? I mean, all of that is a huge area and bolus of focus for us.
Is that part of the roadmap for the coming years? What's your primary agenda for your roadmap for the coming year?
So we're going to continue to innovate on automating areas of care, using data to personalize care, using data to understand, have more insights into how people are doing, and ensure that we have a deep understanding of where their mental health state is and the trends over time. So, focus on member value. How do we get people healthy faster? Operational scaling and efficiency. How do we do it at a lower and lower cost ratio? New products that we're going to be bringing into market. As an example, today we only support 18 plus, but we're going to launch adolescents the first half of next year. So get the ability to support 13 to 17-year-old population as well, which is a huge need. Multilingual capabilities. So today we're English only. We're going to launch our first new language, Spanish, next year. So those types of continued expansions to make sure that we're not only creating efficiency, but we're helping more and more people.
So it reminds me of the early days of retargeting.
Can you believe, amazing how far that world's gone, huh?
I just, I forgot how, we're dating ourselves. So I've eliminated some of the questions with respect to your time. I wish that I had known that you were hooked up with Robinhood. I would have had Wes Moore conduct the interview rather than me. And you're doing wonderful work. And as a human being who at age 62 was diagnosed 50 years belatedly as being bipolar, I appreciate absolutely everything you're doing. And I only came out at age 64, so it's important work, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to conduct this interview. Ginger has an important mission, and I'm delighted that you are doing the same thing that you did in your previous career, and I'm sure it will be a huge success, and it will have a huge impact on humanity because it's a really important undertaking.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you figured that out and are getting care. And we hope that we are going to be able to help millions and millions of people, find that kind of care and get healthy.
Thank you for your time. I'm a minute over budget, but